To begin the hat, we need 40 12-inch pieces of yarn. The easiest way to create that is to wrap the yarn around your hand. So you're going to start off with the end of the yarn in your hand, grab onto that. You're going to wrap down and around your elbow, holding your arm at a 90-degree angle, and back up to your hand. That's 1. You're going to do this 20 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And when you get back to the top of your hand at 20, that's 20 wraps. So we're gonna cut this, which is gonna give us 20 strings on this side and 20 on this side, which will equal the 40 that we need. So I'm gonna take my scissors, cut off the skein of yarn. Then I'm gonna put my scissors in the bottom and cut, and then come to the top and put my scissors inside that loop and cut. So I have 40 12-inch pieces of string. The brim of the hat will be made using a small strip from your toilet paper tube. So you can take the tube and kind of squish it down to make it a little easier to cut. And you're gonna cut a strip that's a little less than an inch. This is going to become the brim of the hat. So the size here will correlate with the size of the strip you cut. So we are going to begin with our first strip and our 40 pieces of string. So each string is going to follow the same process. You're going to start by taking the string, folding it in half, and trying to get the ends close to the same. If they're not exactly perfect, it's okay, but you want them to be close. I'm going to take that fold of the middle of the string, and I've put my tube on its side here, and you're going to slide the bend, the middle part, through that tube. Now I'm going to take my 2 ends and tuck them under and inside that loop and pull up, which will create a little loop over the top and secure that string piece around my cardboard tube. And I'm going to continue this for the whole tube until it's covered. So each piece of string gets bent in half. The bend goes from the right to the left through the cardboard tube. Take my ends, tuck them up through that middle piece, and pull up to securely tuck it around the tube. So each one bend goes through, and the ends, oops, those aren't lined up. And pull up. You'll continue this until the cardboard is completely covered. When you start getting close to covering the tube, you want to make sure that there's no cardboard visible in between your pieces. So you might have to take them and just kind of slide them to the side a little bit just to make sure. I'm just going to tug on here. Make sure they're nice and secure. And you don't want any of that cardboard peeking out of the final hat. So you want to make sure that you're covering that cardboard rim all the way. And you might have a few extra strings left over, or if you lost count, you might need to cut a couple more just to make sure that that's really covered before you move on to the next step. looks like I have completely covered the cardboard ring. There's no cardboard visible. So now I'm just gonna take my knots and kind of tug on them a little bit just to make sure that they're nice and tight and I didn't accidentally loosen any before I begin my last steps. All right. Once you've covered the tube completely and you've tightened all the knots and made sure everything is nice and secure, you're going to take the ends that you have hanging here, and if they're a little uneven, it doesn't matter because we're going to trim them off in a little bit. You're going to give them a little twist, which is going to help you push them inside the ring and out the other side. So you're just going to take your fingers, kind of push that all in there, and then pull them out on the other side. Now you have these little knots still showing around the top, so I'm just going to take my finger and just kind of push those inside the hat so that they aren't visible. And they don't have to be tucked super deep. You just want them kind of rolled away from the edge so that they aren't visible, because this is going to become the brim of your hat, and you don't want to have all those little lumps and bumps around the outside. So I'm just going to straighten these out here. Make sure all of my knots are tucked in to the inside, and I'm going to take all of my ends and comb them out with my fingers to make sure that they're all straight and I've pulled them all through. Look into the middle, make sure that you've got all the ends. Kind of comb out to make sure they're all headed in the same direction and none of them got stuck inside when you pushed them through. I'm going to use one more of these strings that I cut, and these are just extra to make the tie for the top of my hat. So I'm going to lay this one down horizontally here and lay my hat down on top with all of my little pieces combed up. I'm going to take this one, and this is going to become the little hanger that I'm going to use to hang the hat up. So I'm going to take this one and tie it, and I'm just tying a knot, and the height of this is like maybe 2 finger widths. The taller you make your hanger, the taller of a hat you'll have. If you want to make your hat a little bigger or a little smaller, that's up to you. So you'll tie that piece once, put my finger on it to make a little pressure, tie it again, and then I'm going to take those ends and tie those together in a knot so that I've created a loop. I can just trim these. So that's the little hanger loop. Now for the next step, I want to hold the hanger loop down here by the hat so I don't accidentally cut it off when I trim my pom-pom. So I'm going to once again use my fingers as a comb to kind of comb out the top of the hat and make sure all my strings are headed in the right direction. And next I'm going to trim these tops to become the pom-pom. And again, you can kind of choose how big of a pom-pom tassel you want on the top. Kind of trim those little stray ones there so that you have your little pom-pom top. Now, I just realized I accidentally cut my tie. So if you do that as well, you can always just go back and add another one in there. I did exactly what I was saying not to do. You gotta make sure you keep that hanger out of the way when you go to cut. But we can easily add another one on there, retie my loop. It's a pretty forgiving project. Retrim these, careful not to cut them off this time. Fluff my pom-pom. Now the last step is going to be to stuff the inside of the hat. I'm just gonna trim this one, is from the hanger that I accidentally cut off before. The last step is to stuff the inside of the hat to fill it out. You can stuff it with a tissue, like this one here. So I just took a tissue or a little piece of paper towel and just kind of shove that in there to kind of fluff that out and cover that. You can also, if you don't have that around, take your extra yarn ends that you cut and kind of stuff those inside. Sometimes I like to use my extra yarn scrap as my stuffing because if it shows through a little bit, it's the same color as the hat, so it doesn't show like the tissue sometimes does. Sometimes with the tissues, you kind of have to go back and sort of just spread out your edges to make sure the tissue doesn't show. But with the extra yarn pieces on the inside, that doesn't really happen. So that's up to you what you want to use as your stuffing. And there you have your ornament.